Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. I'm in the Living History Park in Augusta, Georgia, and it's starting to rain, so I'll make this introduction quick before I swing over into a canopy of a historic building. I'm going to be talking about Super Fantasy Brawl and giving you a beginner's strategy guide for playing this game. Now, next week we'll have an advanced player strategy guide or a competition strategy guide coming, and that is for a very specific reason. Currently, Quackalope and Gloryhound have combined forces to host the Mythic Games Super Fantasy Brawl tournament that is happening every weekend. Last weekend, this weekend, on Saturday, the day you're watching this, and next weekend, as we watch the best players in the world go head-to-head on Tabletopia and decide who is going to be the ultimate victor. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 tips and tricks that I learned from the first time I watched and hosted this live stream, and what you should be paying attention to as we go into the next one. And like always, the link will be in the top description of this video if you want to swing over to Mythic Games YouTube or Twitch channels and check out the live stream and join us for a tournament. But like I said, it's starting to rain, so let's go ahead and see if we can find a better place to film. So with the rain holding off for a moment, let's go ahead and go through those 5 tips and tricks that you should be aware of if it is the first or 10th or 100th time you're playing Super Fantasy Brawl. The first tip is going to be that taking out your opponent, knocking out your opponent, is potentially a distraction when it comes to the actual strategy of this game. You see, Super Fantasy Brawl specializes in movement and positioning. It is a bit of a territory control game in some ways. It's a bit of a take down your opponent game in some ways. There's a lot of stuff going on. And paying attention to those challenge cards that are coming out is going to be a key feature that you need to be aware of. Instead of like some other tactics games where you win by pummeling your opponent into the ground, Super Fantasy Brawl is going to focus on how you position, maneuver, and delay or manipulate your opponent's turns and actions. Taking them out is great. It powers up your character, it gives you a victory point, but not once have I seen a game secured or fully won because someone was super effective at only taking out their opponent. Instead, it's a combination of those. You take someone out if the objectives and the challenges incentivize you to do so, or it's the only way to keep them from scoring. But it's always a plus. It's never your direct focus. Instead, focus on how you can position yourself throughout the board. What trophies might become available? What are going to be moving out of circulation, so it doesn't matter if you focus on them or not, they're really not going to be factors in this game. And what is potentially still yet to come. You see, there's 11 cards in that challenge deck, and so you can predict that if the blue statue hasn't had much attention, maybe it's time to start moving Gwen in that direction so that when that challenge card comes out, she can be positioned and ready to take the game. So, tip number 1, once again, it's not all about taking out your opponent. Focus on the other elements at play. Focus on scoring victory points. Because at the end of the day, the first of 5 is going to win. Our next point, with a little bit of water noise behind us, so please don't mind it, this is going to be that a good scoring turn, the perfect sequence of events, is going to be better for you than a lot of fun turns in a row. You see, Super Fantasy Brawl is, like we were just talking about, going to be all about scoring points. And while you position your hand of cards and prepare for a bunch of fun turns, sometimes using that prepare action, that plan action, to set cards on the top of your deck that might be fun right now, but set you up for the perfect round later, could be so much more effective than doing the best thing immediately. So, one thing to focus on as you're playing through your game and as you're figuring out your strategy, focus on the long game, focus on the card play, focus on how you can score those victory points instead of just for the sake of it, having fun, impactful rounds. Trust me, the perfect round is going to be better than fun turns. Our third point, check the reactions on the team that you're building. You see, when we get to the advanced strategy guide, we're going to be talking a lot about team building and pairing and how you sequence and put together the perfect unit for gameplay. Focusing on one defined strategy or knowing how you're approaching the game state and how to counter other players. But for this conversation, for the beginner strategy guide, here's one thing that can help you build a more effective and impactful team. Focus on the type of resources they use or predominantly use their skills for. And the best way to judge this, if you don't want to go through every single card, is to look at the reactions. Every player, every character, as you build your team, will have a different set of reactions that you can play at any point throughout the game. Well, here's what's key. You're only ever going to have 3 core resources to use on your turn, and if you pick a team that uses the same resource for the same set of reactions, you're going to be limiting yourself. You're going to be able to react and respond in a much more ineffectual way. Instead, try to divide up your team with at least 2 resources, and sometimes even all 3. Checking those reactions, checking the predominant card that is utilized for the character you're playing with, and making sure to have a counterbalance to play alongside them. This is by far going to open up the doors to long-term strategy and strategical thinking as you position yourself and start learning this game. There's nothing more frustrating than having a multitude of reaction cards in your hand and realizing you can only play one because you only have one resource type available. Or needing that resource to pull off the perfect attack sequence, but realizing if you had another reaction card available, then you might have been able to use that one instead. So, our third point, check what your team is composed of. Make sure you can utilize their available actions and you can make the most of the limited resources that you have. Because at the end of every turn, you're going to be cycling your hand of cards. You don't want the best card to leave your hand because you just didn't have what you needed to play it. From there, our fourth point kind of connects back with that third one. Let's talk about building your team. You're going to want to focus on building a team that works cohesively together. One of the tricky or strategic elements of Super Fantasy Brawl is that your team building, how you link people together, is such an integral part of this game. It is really where your strategy lies. In the competitions that we've seen over on the Mythic Games live stream, we've noticed some cohesion between the decks. The ones that had a specific plan or aim, whether it was maneuvering fast around the board, positioning and roping people in quickly so you could do a lot of damage immediately, or just doing your best to manipulate other players. All of those are viable strategies to victory, but only if you've constructed your team based off of what those cards and players do well, what those characters do well. So this strategy guide, this little bit of advice is spend some time reading through your deck. I know, it might seem like obvious advice, but honestly, here in Super Fantasy Brawl, that is going to make such a momentous amount of difference. Just knowing your cards, what they have the opportunity to do, their reactions, their superpowers when they level up and take out an opponent. Maybe there's a good chain or sequence of events you can start experimenting with as you play. Whether it's, like I said, being able to maneuver around the board as quickly as possible, get into your opponent's end zone and score those quick victory points, or whether it's holding a position, being big and beefy, able to rope people into you instead of needing to chase after them. You never want to be on your back foot in this game. So from the draft all the way through your victory, you want to make sure you're ready and positioned and able to do something that your opponent's not expecting. It doesn't have to be just brutalize the enemy. It could be a combination of things. It could be you're better at maneuvering, positioning, manipulating, standing exactly where you are, better at doing damage, better at utilizing your advanced abilities, better at reactions. There's a whole mix of viable options. My only advice is think about and design your strategy around one, and as you play, learn what you enjoy playing the most. The strategy is great, but it has to fit you as a player. Do you enjoy jumping around like a ninja? Do you have fun shooting someone in the face like a pirate? Or do you just want to win? Pure and simple. Maybe maneuvering and holding position would be the best option for you. Whatever the case, point number 4, know your characters and do your very best to build a strategy around an idea instead of just who looks cool. And finally, some things that I honestly missed the very first time I played this game. You have 11 challenge cards, and all movement or movement abilities have the specification of up to. Means you don't have to move that full amount. Why is that important? Well, 11 challenge cards means that you're not going to be getting a recycled amount of challenge opportunities throughout the course of the game. When I first played this, I didn't realize it, because the team over at Mythic figured if you got the deluxe copy from Kickstarter, You had enough to play multiple sessions and run your own tournament, just like we're doing over on the live stream, but all you needed was an extra set of challenge cards, and so they included them. But it's so simple to overlook the fact that there's only supposed to be 11 in every single game. And I know it's weird that I'm representing the number 2 as 11, but it made sense to me the first time I did it, and then I doubled down. So that's the first bit of advice. Just a little bit of clarification there on how you're supposed to play. And then the second bit, all movement is up to. That means you're not limited by the movement. Instead, it opens doors of opportunity. So as you play and think through and utilize your skill set, make sure you're paying attention to the fact that you can move as far as you're able, but you don't have to move the full amount. And with that, I think I'd venture to guess this has been another video in another location as part of our grand experiment for what we're doing here on the channel. You see, next year I'm going to be doing this a lot more. We're planning a 50-state road trip here with Quackalope where we cover and see as much as possible, collaborating with as many people as possible, getting to play games, talk about the industry, and meet you, the fans, and the community. Of course, the current state of the world will gauge and judge how much stuff I do in an open space where no one is around me versus how much stuff I do sitting next to you at a table. But whatever the case, let me know your thoughts on this type of content. Let me know your thoughts on this hybrid of game coverage and travel footage. It's something that I am super excited about and I cannot wait to bring to the channel. Don't worry about the in-studio stuff. My co-host Jan, the incredibly handsome Puerto Rican, will be having all of that covered for me, while I sleep in my car and go on the road. I mean, after all, we're still just a board game channel. We've got to do it scrappy. Thank you for watching. If you watched to this point, make sure to swing over to that live stream. It is happening literally today, a few hours after this video goes live. Jan is going to be the co-host there with Glory Hound. I'm going to be there next weekend talking and running you through the gauntlet of everything that is Super Fantasy Brawl. Thank you to Mythic for sponsoring this video. Thank you to Georgia for sponsoring this park. And whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Get out and play some games. I'll see you next time. Thank you.